There is a lot of talk about how AEW just pulled off one of the biggest surprises for AEW Revolution, and I'm going to tell you guys what this may mean for future plans for AEW when it comes to these big surprise debuts. Also, in addition to that, we are talking about the Trios belts, and we got to talk about FTR because they were not booked for Revolution. Some people on Twitter are outraged, and now they are accepting indie bookings. We're going to talk about it all in today's video. If you guys want more, subscribe. You already know what to do. All the links in the description to support. Let's talk about some FTR. FTR is now taking select indie bookings. Why? Because they're really good wrestlers and they want to wrestle. And right now, they're not on AEW television every single week wrestling. Now, with that being said, a lot of people are taking this as like AEW is burying FTR. AEW, like, I'm not sure why this happens, but just because somebody isn't used every week doesn't mean that like AEW has fallen out of love with them, or AEW doesn't have plans for them, or AEW doesn't plan to use them, or something like that. And I think it's very evident that FTR has been a big focus and a priority for AEW since they have arrived. They're actually the two guys where I feel like AEW did something with them completely different from WWE. You know, WWE like kind of treated them as a joke, honestly. And, you know, their NXT run compared to the main roster run, it's just a huge difference, right? And now we've seen what FTR can do on AEW's television. There's no reported plans of AEW not using FTR and whatnot. Them taking indie bookings is something that a lot of AEW talent are starting to do, which is normal. It keeps them fresh. It keeps them working. At the end of the day, it keeps them getting paid. That is a benefit that AEW has for their talent. WWE doesn't have that benefit. You know, there's very select few people in WWE who can do anything outside of WWE. FTR can do whatever the hell they want. AEW is allowing it. I see a lot of people are freaking out. Don't freak out. I know how social media gets with this kind of stuff, but just because they're taking select few indie bookings, just because they weren't on Revolution, doesn't mean FTR is not a big part of AEW. They absolutely are, and I'm going to tell you guys a little bit how we can fix that a little bit later on in this video. I want to talk about the Trios belts. It's been something that a lot of people have been talking about for a while. Obviously, I've been talking about it on this channel for a really long time. If you've been watching the channel for like the last 3 years, it's something that we talk about a lot. It's not something that AEW shies away from. In fact, even at the most recent media calls and stuff with Tony Khan, he talked about it, with Kenny Omega coming back. It's something to look into. And I think AEW very well is looking at bringing them in very soon. A lot of people are curious as to when AEW might bring in the Trios belts. They do have plans to bring in Trios belts. Even at one point on social media, there was belts that were leaked. It turned out to not be the actual thing, but there was belts that were leaked that looked like the official Trios belts. That was not the real thing, right? But I don't think it's like a if not now when situation. Like, we know at some point it's happening. We're not questioning when it's going to happen. We know for the most part Trios belts are something that AEW has plans to do. Now, the reason why we haven't seen Trios belts so far, I think, could be a lot of reasons. But of course, when Tony Khan recently talked about this and he mentioned Kenny Omega coming back, it's something for them to look into, that type of thing. I think anytime you introduce a new championship belt, you want star power. Right now, you have something very interesting with the Red Dragon, Adam Cole, the Young Bucks, Kenny. There's this huge dynamic there. Obviously, you're starting to build your Trios division. We see it right now on AEW television. We got Hangman Page and Dark Order. We got House of Black. Now we got Eric Redbeard and Ray Phoenix and Penta and Pac. I mean, obviously that's a group of 4, but with Ray Phoenix being injured, who knows? Maybe they do something different there. My point that I'm making is that they have a lot of people that they can use for this division. I believe that perhaps AEW doing it at Double or Nothing would make the most sense if Kenny Omega is cleared by then. If Kenny Omega is not back for Double or Nothing, I don't see it happening. You got to remember, Double or Nothing is going to have the Owen Hart Cup tournament. So for AEW, it doesn't make sense to you definitely want to slam your show with a whole bunch of great stuff, but you also need some stuff for Dynamite and Rampage. That is something that a lot of people aren't actually factoring in either. So there is an opportunity for AEW to completely load up this pay-per-view and then TV could fall flat. That's not what AEW wants to do, but I would assume if we are going to get those Trios belts, it's going to be around that time or during the summer. I'm curious to see what it looks like. I'm curious to see how it works. It's time that they do it. I think the trios division will help, especially when we talk about FTR, right? FTR is part of the Pinnacle, but the Pinnacle is in a very weird situation the way that they've been booked as a faction. It's been mostly about MJF, Wardlow, and Shawn Spears. We haven't really seen them collectively as a unit, like in storyline. Obviously, a couple appearances here and there, but like as far as all of them being featured together, so just kind of keep that in mind. I think it's really important to mention that like you could even throw somebody with Shawn Spears. Perhaps that's FTR, and then you have another trios team. So there's a lot of cool things AEW can do there. I'm excited about it. What do you guys think? I want to talk about William Regal AEW surprise debuts because a lot of people are talking about this. A lot of people are wondering, how did AEW pull off this surprise? And people are curious about this because WrestleMania and WWE has been leaked like crazy, right? Every week, the main event to Raw and pay-per-views, everybody's talking about this stuff, and quite frankly, people are confused. How can WWE have their entire show leaked, but none of the wrestling medias leak anything about William Regal? Now, I understand that there is this argument that perhaps wrestling media is trying to protect AEW. A lot of people think there might be a bias, right? And as far as that goes, here's what I will say. I don't genuinely believe that wrestling media knows everything about AEW. And the reason why I say this is because I think AEW realized that their audience is incredibly smart. I want to give you an example. Tony Schiavone says he had no idea William Regal was joining AEW. So WrestlingNews.co had the transcript of this interview thing, podcast with Tony Schiavone on what happened when. And Schiavone says he was absolutely stunned about William Regal. I did not see him prior to that. Then all of a sudden, the live interview I had done with Bryan Danielson a few weeks prior made sense because he mentioned Regal's name. I remember in that interview thinking, wow, that's some inside baseball talk there. I don't know if he got permission to say Regal's name or not. It just didn't dawn on me that Regal would show up. When he walked in, the fans went bananas chanting his name. It was a great scene. Before I went back and did my thing with Swerve, I ran back real fast and asked one of our producers backstage where Regal was. He said around the corner. Regal was standing there. I went up to him and grabbed him, hugged him, and said, well, you son of a bitch, you kayfabing son of a bitch, he said. How are you doing? I said, I'm doing excellent. Guys, if Tony Schiavone did not know that William Regal was all elite, what makes you think that wrestling media and everybody's going to know? Here is my argument. AEW and WWE will leak information, I believe, when they want information out. At the end of the day, the dirt sheet business helps wrestling. I've always believed that. The dirt sheets, the news, the rumors, it helps wrestling. I mean, we saw what happened with Cody Rhodes, Madison Square Garden. WWE didn't leak that out. WWE didn't say anything or tease anything about Cody Rhodes. And wrestling fans got pissed about WWE talking about Cody Rhodes, or not talking about Cody Rhodes, but having a surprise. I mean, guys, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to wrestling. You just got to keep that in mind. AEW and WWE, when they want certain things out there, they'll let it be known. But when they really want to keep something a surprise, they will. And that is something to get really excited about, especially for AEW, because the William Regal thing was a legitimate surprise. Sound off in the comments below.